Hi everyone. Guest of today's show is David Yee, who is a serial entrepreneur and also an investor, a mentor, a great supporter of startup communities all around Asia, and above all, a brilliant public speaker. Today, I have the privilege to get to know and bring a lot more from David about his stories, his tips, and beyond all, I really want to know how did he become such a brilliant speaker. Let's go ask David and find out what he has to share with us today. Hi David, it's really great to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
You have one of the interesting stories in entrepreneurial world because you went from South Korea, grew up in States as a kid for an immigrant parents, and then you ended up building not just one, not two, eight startups with two success stories. I want you to share your story. You have an incredible story. Tell us more.
Sure thing, Rafat. First and foremost, thank you for having me here. This is a joy. I'm going to look forward to listening to more and more of these. My story is not not typical, but not unusual either. My parents, they're from Korea, moved to the United States because there was supposed to be better promise there. My father was continuing his studies. Um, I was born and I had an identity crisis actually growing up in the United States. And I mention this because I think it's very important to have an identity crisis for most entrepreneurs. If you don't question who you are, you don't actually discover your strengths, your gifts, and your weaknesses. And the thing is from a very young age, I had to question my identity. Right? What am I? And it doesn't have to be about race and ethnicity. People question their identity when it comes to career too. Am I a engineer? Am I an artist? What am I? And it's when we struggle through those moments that we begin to find our entrepreneurial and creative spirits. And that's what happened to me. My first startup was after my career teaching in China. I found myself asking, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Right? And in that moment, I thought, hey, I'm gonna do something that's most helpful for the world. And what I knew how best to do was I thought I'd unite all of Asia. There was a thing called EU at the moment that came.
Like the
European Union
European
was new.
Union. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought there
That's
should
a
be an
crazy
Asian.
idea to start with.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what's crazy? I wasn't like a stupid little kid that thought I'm gonna somehow make everything united. I thought I'd start with what I can, which was, hey, I taught English. I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to get all these middle school students from all over Asia, from some of the best families as well as from, not so well off families. And these students, my theory was if they're trying to learn English at that young age, then they must be future leaders. Put them all in one place, get them to become friends. And the vision was that one day maybe the president of Sri Lanka or prime minister of Sri Lanka, or the president of China, president of USA will all meet at this camp, so the future, when they become leaders, the world will be a better place. That failed. That startup failed. That's one of my startups, and it failed. But again, to make this long story short, failure is a good thing because it doesn't kill you, right? This isn't like fighting a war, and it'll only make you stronger as long as you continue to fight. And so, yeah, that was my first startup, and the one big thing I learned from that was, hey, vision, beautiful dreams is not enough. You need to know how to sell and make money, raise money. And so that's when I started that journey. Fast forward to today, after eight different startups, one small exit, two bigger ones. Now I'm an investor. I'm on the other side, right? And people ask me, why are you an investor? And very simply, it's just, I think it's time for me to pass on. Does that mean I stopped building? No, I'm always building something. Like building this venture capital firm is building a firm. And my philosophy is like, I'd rather more people build things that will outlast them. So with this venture capital firm, I'm not looking to exit it. I'm not looking to somehow IPO it. I'm looking to build something that, you know, 400 years later, somebody might look at it and say it's still here, you know? So yeah, I hope that sums it up. That's, Yeah,
And
that's
that's
who I
when
am.
you decide to come back to Asia, especially South Korea, Vietnam. You are actively involved in Vietnamese startup ecosystem as well.
Yeah, yeah. I decided to come to Asia because I think people are obsessed about AI. People are obsessed about crypto.
That's right.
These things are, I'm sorry, but they're going to come. They're going to change the world. And some other technology is going to come in the picture one day.
Yeah,
But one
trends
thing
will
that
always keep changing, and yeah, that's right.
exactly, exactly. Look, this isn't to say the internet's no longer important or the smartphone's no longer important, but the minute these things saturate, everybody is using it. The value of technology is such that you need something new technology, especially in the startup world. But I think one thing, despite it being here forever, that hasn't ever completely saturated is global relations and trade. And I believe there's a lot of arbitrage and opportunity and advantages working between countries, right? Whether it's a startup that starts in Sri Lanka and goes out and sells to other countries, whether it's getting United States and the US money to come to Asia and start investing here, right? Whether get a company from Asia, Sri Lanka, and any other country here, go to the United States and open shop. That still nobody's mastered it. Like no one knows how to do it as a science.
That is
But
true.
I think, yeah, I think, but then if, but that's that, but everyone needs to do it if they want to keep growing. So that's why I'm
Yeah,
here. I realize we
that's
can
right.
do it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a founder going into a investor, and now you are mentoring, and you I met you through a workshop, by the way. So so you're doing, giving back to the community as well. So when you talk about the founder's startup journey, one thing that comes to like that stick to me is that you always say it's you have to have grit, you have to have uh, like never giving up mindset, right? That's how, even when you talk about the first failure, that's what it is. So when you look for traits in founders to invest as an investor now, what kind of these traits, and when you advise them, what kind of these one two important traits that is like must have?
You know, there are people you meet and you know that they're going to make it happen no matter what. And that no matter what, that they're going to make something happen no matter what isn't necessarily stubbornness. There is a balance of that. I'm never going to give up and be stubborn, but there's also this intelligence and a self awareness of constantly learning and pivoting and fixing, and then you know when to let something go and when to grasp something. So what I call that is wisdom. They have very good wisdom. Good wisdom leads to good judgment. And if you have good judgment, you make good decisions. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not just about not giving up, but these people have good decision making abilities. Again, that's tied to um, like wisdom, judgment, decision. Yeah.
Yeah. And like as you talk about entrepreneurs, I was watching one of your content, and you have this strong opinion about entrepreneurs having side hustles, which I think is a really important topic as well for several reasons. But why do you have this strong opinion about side hustles, especially for dreamers?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question. And look, I'm very careful and hesitant to tell anybody something's bad outright because there's always an exception to the rule. However, for most entrepreneurs, if you call your look side hustle, the word side hustle means that there's a main hustle, right? The thing about a side hustle implies that you haven't given it your everything. So psychologically already you're communicating to yourself who, when you're lying to yourself, that's the biggest failure. But you're also telling other people, hey, this is a side hustle. I'm playing it safe. It's not risky. I'm just making chump change and some money. My side hustle became big. Well, when is it going to be a main hustle then? Because as long as it's a side hustle and you think somehow that it's making more money than your like day job, at some point you're kind of lying to yourself. And that's what I mean. Being an entrepreneur is one of the most honest and you're wearing your heart and on your sleeves thing in the world. It's a very vulnerable thing to be an entrepreneur. Why? Because most entrepreneurs are giving it their all and they're committing to the company and them are one. And it's really hard not to treat it that way as an entrepreneur. But the implication of a side hustle is not that. The implication of side hustle is I just want to make money, which is not bad. But again, that this isn't your 100%. So when an investor hears that, of course, I'm going to be very discouraging of it. Yeah, that's why I'm so critical of side hustles, because you shouldn't, it can start as a side hustle, but it should eventually become your main hustle, or you should just let it go, one or the other. Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with the focus as well. Like if you focused on the side hustle, eventually you end up giving not much focus on whatever that your big dream is.
Yep.
At the
Yep.
end of the day, everyone has limited resources, attention, be that be time as well.
Exactly. That's why it has to become the main hustle. If not, it's a constant distraction. Look, it's okay to have a side hustle if that's you're always just going to make tiny bit of money on the side. That's fine. That's what a side hustle is. But these days we use the word side hustle as though it's like, oh, I have like 10 side hustles. I'm sitting there going, you're wasting your time. Like you are basically no different from someone who's like, I work at McDonald's and I mow someone's lawn and I cut someone's hair and I throw out the trash. I do 9 different jobs and I'm rich. You just replaced everything with something internet, but you're not really building character. You're not building something meaningful for the world. You're really not helping yourself grow. You're just making
Yeah.
money with like busy. And that's I don't think you don't make you're not becoming a better person and the world's not becoming a better person for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to the next topic, something that I'm like super excited to talk to you about. I think, David, I think you're a super communicator.
Mm,
Like I think you are a super communicator. The way you tell stories, the way you did the workshops, and even when you talk, when you present, and all of these, the traits when you communicate public and even in personally, I've seen you, listen to founders and the way you talk. I think it's a great talent that you have, but I'm pretty sure it's not a trait or talent that you born with. I'm pretty sure you trained
mm.
yourself to an extent, get good with it, right? So share with us, like, how did you get here? Like, how did you become a super communicator? What are the tips that you can share for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And two things come to mind. Okay. And if I think about this more, I'm sure I come up with better and deeper. But I did think about these two. Number one is I think great communication happens when you mimic and try to follow what other great communicators do. And that's super important. Whether you start by doing it intentionally or unintentionally, you feel yourself catching on. Because here's the thing, communication is more than just words. I think words are things that we can all learn, memorize, and learn to string words together, make a sentence. But some of the best communicators I've seen, this is one guy, whenever he speaks, he emphasizes what he made tippy toes. And I remember thinking, he uses his hands very purposefully, and I've seen these communicators where their hands are everywhere. I'm like, oh, that's a little annoying. I don't want to do that. So I've been very intentional about looking at other people who they just mesmerize me. And then most people, when they see these type of speakers or these communicators that are mesmerizing, even if it's a phone call or a Zoom call, there are people who are mesmerizing, charismatic. And most people just kind of stop it at that. They're like, wow, that person made me feel inspired. That person really encouraged me. That person made me feel happy. Well, that I'm crying out of joy. They stop there. They stop at themselves. But if you stop, reflect, and think about what that person did and really break it down and then try it yourself, how many people actually do that? But that's the first step into becoming an amazing communicator, right? And so that's one thing I have done actually. Frankly, it was very important for me because my parents did not speak any English in the United States. My first language was Korean. But what happened was I wanted to be better. And I looked at everyone around me who were amazing and was mimicking them. I was following them, whether it was my teacher, that old man across the street who, for whatever reason, even if he got angry, we all still loved him for whatever reason. On television, seeing these amazing actors and actresses be so good on screen, I absorbed it all and I mimicked it. I really intentionally try to get better. So I think that's one thing.
I,
That's one.
I instantly agree 200% with that, because you know why to the most part I've done the same thing. I'm not saying
Nice.
I'm not saying claiming that I'm a great communicator.
You
Like
are a great
I
communicator.
thank you, right? I to an extent I taught myself English, like what, by watching TV shows, because I didn't grow up in a family where everyone talked English, or so I had to teach myself English. And then, especially being in a place like Hatch, that's where you see how business people communicate. And I started mimicking. I'm talking about early days, just trying to see how they do it, how they do this, and then just try to that's how I think it's a great tip. It's a brilliant tip. Yeah, just to
Yeah.
start with. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's that. The second one is actually as important. I think if the first tip was about like makeup, the second tip is more internal. You know what's funny is two things need to happen internally. One is you need to believe that you are a great communicator, that it's something that you can be. It's an identity thing. Um, I thought, you know what? At home, when I talk to my parents, they listen to me. I'm a great communicator. It's just I haven't acquired the words to do the same thing in English. So once I do though, I know I'm a great communicator. That identity is very, very important. The belief that you are, because we are great communicators. Um, but part of that identity comes with thinking. If your thinking is cluttered, it's hard to communicate well. I think great communicators have clear thought. And so how do you get clear thought? It's actually pretty simple. You should read more. People need to read and think a lot. It's an art that's lost, but not many people read enough. But when you read and like just kind of write your thoughts out and read and just reflect internally a lot, you become better at communicating because you have less because you're thinking fast and slow, and your thoughts are moving in such a way where you can string those words together at the same time, right? Because it doesn't matter how beautiful you speak if the words behind you aren't well thought out and deep and well constructed, it doesn't sound good. And that's the second part is your identity and just reading a lot so you can string the words, know what you want to say without having to think so much about yourself saying it. You got to be just doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
Two brilliant tips. There's one more element to it. Most of the thing that I ask is like things that I observe, and I think you're just excelling at it, right? Another thing that I observe from you is I think you have pretty good networking skills. I think it was a podcast where you also talked about this topic. It's the first time I heard about that. That is like the weak ties, strong ties, and how do you use those weak ties and strong ties to build your networking, like how you keep up with the strong ties. Like, share more about that. I really
Yeah.
want to hear about the
Yeah.
tips
Yeah. Yeah.
around your
Uh,
networking skills.
so yeah, people, if they think about the people around you, okay, many people have written about this, but I'm just going to tell it to you my own spin because I'm mixing a lot of things here together. Some people say that there are name five people that you talk to every day, the most, for five people. And there's this weird and kind of stupid theory that's like, oh yeah, everyone has five people. I have like two sometimes, right? Or sometimes I have 10. So that five number is kind of random. But the important point there is that they're strong, close circle type people. These people are the people who know the same jokes as you, right? You can laugh at the same jokes. These people know what would make you cry and what make you sad. Um, Even if I don't talk to them every day, I know like if they're in trouble, I'd run right there, and they do the same for me. These are strong ties. They're very, very strong, and it almost helps us shape our identity. The strong ties, but immediately next to strong ties are kind of the medium weak, the weak ties. These are maybe, hey, you know what's funny is that they were my classmates, but I didn't really talk to them much. Or hey, they're my friend's cousin or my friend's friends, and we kind of know about each other, know of each other. I may have never met them, but we both know the same person. We both like this person. These are all weak ties. It's like if you wanted to, they can become stronger, but you just, for whatever reason, maybe lack of time, lack of energy, missed opportunities, they're not your strong ties. They're just kind of there. Um, and then there are all the acquaintances, right? These are also weak ties. People at work you say hi and bye to, right? They kind of know you, your reputation, but that's it. And then there are the strangers who might know you because of your school or your job, your career. And then there are people who just don't even know you at all, would never know you. They don't even know you exist unless like you somehow appear in front of them. Yeah. So where do all the sales happen? Where do all the great businesses happen? Actually, it's not the strongest tie, you know, because if the sales was going to happen, they already know about you. They would have bought from you. It actually happens from the weak ties. It's not even the people who like, and so it's acquaintances, the people who would know you, because this right there. And supposedly, think about it. How do you get more of these weak ties? How? It
You
isn't
meet more
by,
people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not by going to the strangers all the way out there. They're not going to get closer. Like, I mean, the most effective way to get more weak ties isn't it is actually to get more strong ties around you who will bring those weak ties. You
So
know,
leveraging the strong ties to expand your weak ties.
exactly, exactly. And yes, if you become viral, if you become special, and if you become a personality, yeah, people will buy from you because those become weak ties too, right? But most people can't and won't become influencers, right? If not, then you have to get more strong ties. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I want to say is also the one reason that we have met, like, David knows Rifat, Rifat knows David, is also thanks to some of the ties, strong ties and weak ties that I, made around this amazing place called Hatch.
yeah,
It's a,
yes.
that's the one reason why we are talking to each other. It's just, makes me feel how important it is to nurture the weak ties as well, leveraging those strong ties. That's what I love about like a place like Hash, like a startup community, is that removes a lot of resistance from you by being in a place like where everyone else that you want to make a tie with. Yeah.
I agree. And you know what? It's so special what's going on in Hatch right now. Um, and it's so special because it's a moment in history of Sri Lanka when the brightest minds and people who can do some amazing startup activity could go anywhere, anywhere. Like they can do it anywhere. But that's the thing about founders is it's a lonely journey, and if you have a place where you can coalesce together and really communicate and work and interface and even share best practices, it does a lot. But the reason I say it's special is because when this becomes so normalized that people get so used to it and so numb to it that maybe there are other things like Hatch in one community, and then it becomes so saturated, people become bored. People don't no longer feel it's special. When that happens, which is very common in humans, right? So when like we get tired of things, that's when you know that Sri Lankan's ecosystem of startups has reached another level. But the problem with that is it's not as exciting. And it's like, look, now is when Steve Jobs of Sri Lanka, the Elon Musk of Sri Lanka are going to come out now. You get my point? Like, yeah. So this is a very special time. Yeah, people are gonna one day like look back and be like, "Oh, do you remember that time in Hatch? Oh, those were the historic moments. These are legends." It's only gonna happen once, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really rooting for those success stories to come out of not just Hatch, even from Sri Lanka as well. One of the interesting project that you're working on, it really caught my eye. That, like, I didn't even know what the project was. I just read the name. It says Leverage Asia, right? I didn't
yeah,
know what the concept was, like nothing. I ended up watching some of the podcasts that you have done. I get the idea is basically it's more of like leveraging the power of Asia for the future. I guess that's the idea. I actually wanted to ask you this question. What's your vision behind this? What's the idea? Why are you all
yeah,
in on Asia? Like like what's going on about that project?
yeah. I think something I have to admit on that project is I'm still figuring things out. Okay, I know that Asia is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and 60% of the world's population lives right here in Asia. Okay. Um, yeah, which is crazy, right? But it's true. And but about 50 to 60% of the world's capital is controlled in the United States. So here's something interesting. Because I studied in the US and grew up there, and I've lived in Asia, something I think about a lot is, wait, why isn't there more economic movement between these two regions? Yeah, there's a huge ocean in between, but the technology and all of it shouldn't be a problem. And you know what's funny? I get it back 100 years ago because none of us in Asia spoke English, but now we all do. And I get it 100 years ago, nobody in America was familiar with Asian culture and they couldn't even eat Asian food. But now everyone loves Asian food. They love, I had a hopper today. It's really good. I had 8 of those. Um, no, people love each other. So Leverage Asia is about, first and foremost, um, helping professionals, founders, executives in Asia and America drive more partnership to each other. And so, in some ways, there's two kind of stakeholders there, right? There are people from America and there are people from Asia. I've decided I'm still trying to make this decision about Leverage Asia. It should start by helping people in Asia sell to America, I think. I'm figuring that out. I'm still trying to figure out. I think by helping more and more Asian founders, Asian companies be successful in the United States, we're going to get more peace. We're going to get more awareness in America and more generosity going both ways. Whereas if we help more American startups come to Asia, that doesn't really change history. It's just the same. So Leverage Asia is about, as you can tell, I really like helping people and helping the world become a better place. Leverage Asia is helping the world become a better place by helping founders like you, founders and startups and executives succeed in their landing, expansion, and scaling in the United States and Canada and Americas, right? And I think that's should be a lot easier because we have so many Asian Americans out there. But still, to this day, it's very rare to see any Asian company go to America and succeed. It's so rare. But I think that shouldn't be the
I think it's a super interesting concept, and there's a lot of potential as well. Even from an emerging country like Sri Lanka, like most of the startups try to now incorporate in US, work with the capital that's there, use the resources here. Like a lot of people are like going to take that path, and I see a lot of trend in that as well. One interesting question that I have is like, as you said, like Asia has 60% of the population, but Asia is not just it's so much East Asia, Southeast Asia, and then there's the entire different world of Middle East, right? So now you talk about that your enthusiasm for the capital transaction or business transactions between the Western economy and the Asian economy. But how do you think we within ourselves, like the collaborations within South Asia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, like how do you see that?
I think that's a great question. So the reason I even called it the word leverage Asia is to leverage Asia. Part of leveraging Asia is inter Asia, right? Between Asia, you can,
Yeah,
and then to leverage your strength in Asia to go to the United States. So
yeah.
the term leverage Asia, that's where it comes from. That stemming thought about that. What's funny is this: is you know how many countries there are in Asia? It depends on whether you count North Korea as a country or not. Um,
I
there are
guess
supposed
69.
Oh wow, there's 69. According to ChatGPT, there are
No, no.
49.
Sorry, it was my guess. My guess
Yeah,
is, yeah, yeah, random number 49. Oh wow,
49.
still, it's still a large, like a very, very big number.
Yeah, it's a big number. There are 50 states in the United States. Um, the each of the states in the United States has a different education system. They have different marriage laws. They have just different laws that are pertinent to human living, each of the 50 states. But what unites the 50 states is the military that protects it, the federal government, right? You look at Asia, we have 49 countries, not even states. And then you have 49 different militaries, right? And then it's Asia because we're all in like one continent, or our islands and everything is just like one big mass over here. And It's continuous. That's why we're Asia. But here's the thing. I think there is something that unites the Asia people. So, for example, I wish it was something as tangible as the military unites all of Asia, or like the EU, the currency unites all of Asia. But I think Asia has something going that a lot of countries don't have. If I meet an Asian person, I know already that family is everything, which I just know
Yeah, it's common all over. Yeah,
all over
it's
Asia.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. And although we might have different food and maybe different religions, another thing about Asia is that this concept of respecting the elders, right, is all over Asia. It's different from like other country, other continents, like Latin America, United States, Europe. It's just different. They don't have that the way they do in Asia. So there's something about Asia that's making us unique. The funny thing is, it's a lot more difficult because it's not as tangible like religion or military. So we have a more difficult task than the rest of the continents. However, I'm very optimistic because now with the advent of technology and as education and we're all learning the same history, and actually that's not true. Some of us are learning different histories. We're learning all the same science and the same math and maybe the same English.
And the best
Um,
part is the latest technology. Let's say ChatGPT may that be the best technology right now. It's instantly available for everyone in like within 2 3 months.
exactly, exactly. No, I agree. I think with that, what's going to happen with Asia, hopefully, is as they say, there will always be conflicts, obviously, because we're different countries, like the way China and India are at odds, right? But I do think that as okay, I need to be very like careful with this word, but the way the Asian nations are going to collaborate more is if we have a common goal, all of us, and if we can all agree that the emerging economies in Southeast Asia and South Asia are important to the entire Asia ecosystem. And we're all going to come together and make sure that happens, right? China's going to invest, Japan, like some of the Asian economies in East Asia that have had the privilege of getting there first because they got in contact with modern technology first or weapons or whatever. If Asia commits to, because we know the rise of South Asia, Southeast Asia's narrative, nobody's going to deny that. If we can somehow give and like invest in each other and really do it with the heart of not necessarily capitalism, but with a, I mean, we want to grow, but with an attitude of we want to do this in a sustainable and fruitful way for the next generation with for our family. Because again, that's uniquely Asian to think about the next generation, your family, in a unique way. If Asia can do that and Asia as a whole can rise, so if Southeast Asia and South Asia rises, and because of that, East Asia is getting return on their investments, and all of Asia starts rising. So our goal should be to make Asia the wealthiest continent in the world. If that goal can happen together, because the money's there, yeah,
Everyone's going up. It's like when the tide goes up, all the boats goes
yeah,
up.
yeah. I think if you ask anybody in China or India or Korea, Japan, and ask them, hey, do you want South Asia or Southeast Asia? Do you think their economy is going to grow? And they will say, yeah, it's going to be the fastest. Would you like to invest? They'll all say yes. It's weird. But we need to actually like I almost feel like we need to all like speak this language together. Yeah. And I hope Leverage Asia plays a small part in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really hope so. I'm looking forward to keep following up on exciting things that you do. I have an interesting question here. Since right now, for those who don't know, David's right now in Sri Lanka, and he's giving a lot to the Sri Lankan community since yesterday and today. He's done a lot of workshops giving back to the community. And David, I have a question for you. Based on like you've been to places, you've seen the regions from in state you did the businesses and you are now investing in East Asia. So how honestly, like where are we, like where's Sri Lankan startup system right now, like no
Oh,
filters.
you know what? Where Sri Lankan startup system is that's the thing. The information is so fast. I was surprised at how far Sri Lankan startups are. And it's a unique advantage they have. So, okay, to answer your question directly, it's a young ecosystem in that I don't know how many investors there are here, right? I'm still learning. If you go to a place like Silicon Valley, you have so many investors, not just founders, you have investors. So what you have going on in Silicon Valley is, I think, three things happening. I call it the holy trinity of three things happening. Is you have the founders, you have the investors, and not just one or two investors, but investors across all stages: pre-seed, seed, growth, late mezzanine. Yeah, and then you have the public markets, and you have the private markets, you have the banks. So there's a very, very wealth, big kind of fund ecosystem. So you have the entrepreneurs, you have the funding ecosystem, and then you know what else you have? You have these universities that are just playing a bridging role between all of it. That's why Stanford was so important, like people ignore the importance of Stanford in the Silicon Valley ecosystem. Stanford was played a very important role, not because it's Stanford. It could have been any college, but what colleges do is it distinguishes between the followers and the leaders. And I don't mean by college. Here's a funny thing. I believe that everyone who goes to college ends up working for the people who found companies. The best employees are there. And how do you find each other? Because became roommates, your mates, your friends. So, anyways, so those three things need to exist. I've been in Sri Lanka for 2 days. To answer your question, the founders are right there. I kid you not. Your ideas, what you're working on, even the valuations that you're able to get, it's on par with everyone in the world. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, let's say, 50 to even 80% of the companies I met at Hatch, if I took you guys out of Hatch, like up, literally got you on the plane and put you in the middle of Silicon Valley, you would all get funded within, I think, a year. I believe this. What you don't have here is a funding ecosystem. So that's why you're going to have the few funders here back you, and you're trying to pitch the global. But the global are people are like, I don't know Sri Lankan startups. I don't know Sri Lanka. Well, if it's so good, why didn't somebody in Sri Lanka invest in it? And there's all this psychological doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's missing, frankly, the
That
ecosystem.
has to be validated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's right. And as you always say, Sri Lanka could be that, David beats Goliath, one of
yeah.
the.
It will
Yeah.
be. No, and I think that's so important. And I think the belief is a part of it, but you have to see the evidence and understand that, yeah, that is the story. Um, okay, so it's just one thing. David beat Goliath, why that's so important is,
Underdog
you know what?
story.
Yeah, you know the story?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know
Yeah.
this.
I kind of, yeah.
Okay, yeah, a little boy beats a giant warrior with just a stone, right? And a sling. He just, but the parallel here is this. If you give a startup, okay, um, let's say there's a startup in Sri Lanka and a startup in Silicon Valley, and they're both first time founders, okay? And you give them both $2 million, okay? Um, Here's what's going to happen. Who's going to make it go further? The Sri Lankan startup.
Sri
With the,
Lankan, because
yeah,
survival, and then the low burn, and like they have that survival instinct, like not to solve everything with money, you know what I mean. So
yes,
it's more likely to be that Sri Lankans taking a longer.
exactly, exactly. I think what we're missing in Silicon Valley, and look, the Silicon Valley's a great place, and there are amazing startups that come out of there. But very quickly, what I'm realizing is that a lot of founders aren't as resourceful as they used to be. And as long as that happens, you know who's going to win? The people who are resourceful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that David Goliath is actually happening right before us and in front of
Yeah.
our eyes.
And
Yeah,
yeah, we're part of that game, and we really hope that success happens.
it is
And
gonna happen. I really
yeah.
believe look, it's like it's not a hope.
and
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
and it's really happy for me to see you, like when people like you come back and interact with the community, especially Sri Lankan startup ecosystem, especially the people who actually want to grow the Asian countries, and along with like grow along with each other. This kind of collaboration is absolutely necessary for
Yes.
for a country like ours as well. David, last words. What's your one advice that you would share to any upcoming entrepreneur?
Mm. The most important decision you'll ever make is whether the most important decision you'll ever make. The first most important decision you'll ever make is making a decision whether to get married or not. And the second most important decision you're ever gonna make is who you decide to get married to. I think so many founders overlook the importance of that. They're so focused on building, 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 making money that they forget. You know who else said this is Warren Buffett.
Oh wow. This is the
Yeah,
first time I'm hearing like any entrepreneur saying that, it's the marriage or who you
it's
gets
the
married to as an
most
important.
important decision you're ever going to make because I talk about silent co-founders. That person is your co-founder, whether you like it or
Yeah.
not forever. I guess you can get a divorce, but that's not why people get married. You don't go into business thinking you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So my point is that I think people don't think about it as enough as they should. And I want to encourage my advice is for all founders out there, think about it and make a good decision on it, right? And definitely, it's the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant tip. Thanks a lot, David, for being here with us today. And I really, really appreciate that you're giving your time. And importantly, you have given so much to the Sri Lankan startup community last 2 days. And I really hope you're gonna come back and giving us more, interact with us, collaborate with us. And I'm looking forward to the days where David is out of Sri Lanka. He's no longer
Yeah.
working out of
Yeah.
Vietnam.
I know. I know what. Let's next time I'll bring my wife. Okay. And let's see where we go from there. Thank you, Rafat. Thank you very much. Love the show. Love the setup. I look forward to this. I'm gonna have you on my podcast. Okay.
Will do. Will do.